Welcome to the Casting Forward podcast, brought to you by Clubmate, the all-in-one management platform for clubs and fisheries. We'll be talking all things fish and fishing with new guests every episode from the world of angling, including fishery managers to some of the best anglers in the country, finding out what they're up to, advice for your fishery, and thoughts on the future of the sport.
Hi guys, and welcome to the first episode of season 2 of the Casting Forward podcast with Clubmate. We're in for another great season. We've got some fantastic guests coming up to talk about the state of angling, the future, and of course what they've been up to themselves. Today we've got Jamie Clayton. You might have seen him before on some of our content, but Jamie Clayton has joined us. He is the head of Manchester Angling Club, formerly GJ Fisheries Manchester. But we're here today to talk about Northwest Anglers Alliance, which is a new initiative Jamie started. I won't spoil the fanfare for him, but welcome, Jamie. Welcome to the podcast.
Cheers, Rob. You okay, mate? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, Jamie. Just so everyone's aware, me and Jamie are pretty close. You know, we work together with Manchester Angling Club, formerly GJ Fisheries, being a member of Clubmate for several years. So we are very familiar. So it's going to be a very chit-chat conversation here, just to talk about angling, really, but to talk about what the Northwest Anglers Alliance is all about. So for the audience members, Jamie, that have never heard about you, just to give a little bit of a brief background. What I don't like to do with this podcast is do like, this is your life type thing. We don't want to go through the full biography of Jamie Clayton, but give everyone a little bit of a background of who you are and where you've come from. And then we'll talk about what is really important in this call, really, the future, talk about the Northwest Anglers Alliance.
Yeah, so basically I've been heavily involved in fishery management for the last 11 years. I took over a little syndicate 11 years ago, purely by chance. And then much like I've said, like in the past to you, everything that's happened since then has just happened organically. So I've gone from having one water to now 7. I think 3 years ago I had 13 waters, but I'd definitely kind of taken on too much for myself. So I've kind of condensed everything down now, like into like a much more kind of manageable, bunch of waters. So I've got 7 waters over 3 different sites, and I run it under Manchester Angling Club. We've got a few syndicate waters and a few day ticket, and currently with the fisheries, I'm trying to provide something for everybody. We've also got a CIC, which is specifically focused into introducing young people into fishing. And that's kind of where my, passion's kind of been for the past, probably 2 or 3 years at least. Like the youth participation.
So the one thing I'd say, Jamie, is it's really obvious, and this is why I think we've been great mates since we started working together, really. But your passion for the sport of angling is just the most obvious thing you'll ever see in the world. You've just got this, I say headstrong, but I mean it in the most positive of ways. You've got this kind of direct drive to improve the sport of angling, and I think from day one it's been
blind passion. Blind passion.
I don't want to add the word stupid, but you've got this fantastic, and it can be rare in the modern era where we're all busy and people haven't got a lot of time to help others sometimes. But this absolute passion where it's clear to see that your only goal is to make things better. And as we all know from working in the sport of angling, mate, we're not doing it to get rich. None of us are doing it for to become millionaires, because otherwise we'd do anything other than work in fishing, because it's not the most lucrative of sports. No. But obviously you've, as you said, really organic journey from what you might say just an angler to running a fishery to expanding that fishery. The CIC is a really positive thing. Obviously, participation is something we're really massive fans of over at Clubmate. We do tons of time and effort to help with kids fishing, and to dedicate a project in the Manchester area to getting kids fishing is absolutely fantastic. But of course, now that's led you to today, so to speak, and the formation of the Northwest Anglers Alliance. So, firstly, let's say tell everyone what that is. You know, what is Northwest Anglers Alliance to you? And just quickly, what's the kind of what's the quick version? You know, what's the goal there? What's Northwest Anglers Alliance and what's it going to achieve?
So the Northwest Anglers Alliance is a not-for-profit. Sorry, my dog that. Sorry. He's basically, it's a not-for-profit organisation geared up, specifically to improve angling within the Northwest. And again, it has happened kind of organically because I never set out to do what I've done at all. So it's like everything that I've done, I've ended up doing, because I've seen the need. Like I've never actually sat down, years ago and said, this is what I want to do. It's because in like my kind of fishing management journey, I've seen the need for this. So, I've done it. So, basically, I just think like I see angling as quite like a selfish industry. It's always about what people can get from it. It's quite self-serving, whether that's a sponsorship, a full-time job, or you see celebrity status. You see, whereas my thing for a long time has been about kind of giving back. So that's what I've been doing with Manchester Angling Club in terms of improving local angling. The same with like the CIC. So again, this is just like a natural kind of development, I feel. So anyway, like in kind of setting up the not-for-profit side of stuff. So it's a subscription-based membership. It's £1.99 a month for individual anglers. It's £12 a month for clubs. It would be the member clubs that would be the direct kind of beneficiary of like any monies raised. I think it's going to be an incredibly slow burner, but it's something that I do kind of believe in. Like I think I've got a reputation locally, and I've got a track record locally for doing the right thing. So it's kind of on that reputation, I want to try to do this now.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in a lot of cases. I think we're all aware of a lot of the challenges in angling, which we can cover as we kind of have this conversation today. But you are right that a lot of, and I don't think it is just anglers, by the way. I think it's the nature of people. And without saying that, people are selfish, I think it comes across as selfish, but people are very focused on what they want and what they want to achieve and what they want to achieve today. And I think one of the challenges is convincing anglers that without their input and without investment, you can't keep taking. I mean,
It's short-sighted. That's what it is.
If you had a basket of apples, Jamie, and you took one out of it every day without putting any in it, you'll have an empty basket.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which is really obvious. It's a really obvious way of breaking that down to its simplest form. And there's always this impression that the solutions are always someone else's problem. Obviously, Northwest Anglers Alliance being a kind of solution for the northwest of England, but very much along the lines of a membership organisation, a federation, or even the governing body. The Angling Trust, or people like Angling Cymru in Wales, but a local federation that unites clubs and anglers and fisheries together is a kind of microcosm. It's a small scale model of a governing body that kind of unites people and uses their kind of resources and their funding for good projects. But as with all those models, it's an incredible challenge to get people to engage and to hand over their own time and money, because there's always this impression from a lot of people, and it's not to say everyone. There's some fantastic people putting a lot of effort and time and money and putting a lot of their life into angling. And I see it all the time, Jamie. Obviously I deal with hundreds of clubs and fisheries, thousands of anglers, not only professionally but personally in my volunteer time as well. A lot of people just think the problem should be fixed by somebody else, and I'm just not sure where they think that comes from. And I think this is what you've reached the same conclusion. You've found a problem, and the most successful inventions of all time, Jamie, weren't because someone just invented something. They identified a problem and fixed it.
Or they fell upon it.
Yeah, they fell upon it by accident. An apple fell on Isaac Newton's head, or whatever it might well be. But someone invented the bottle opener because they couldn't open a bottle. So you find the problem and then you find the solutions. Now there are definitely problems. obviously you said it's NWAA is for the benefit of anglers and fisheries in the northwest, and the clubs will be the direct beneficiaries. But I suppose, I could kind of, I'm sure I could come up with a lot of the reasons, but just to describe what they're going to be beneficiaries for, what are the problems? I think the important part of this conversation in NWAA is what are the problems, and then we can talk about the solutions.
Well, say for instance, the first project again, like everything, has just kind of happened organically again. So the first kind of project is the fact that I'm helping a group of anglers to, secure the lease and the license on their local park lake. It's been abandoned by the previous club for the past 5 years. They've been suffering like a lot of DO crashes. So what I'm doing is only because of the position that I'm in. Obviously, like I've got qualifications in fishery science, so I'm in more of a experienced, capable position to be contacting councils on behalf of these lads. I've kind of written them a fishery management plan. So we was down there every week, did like a massive litter pick. I've got all the local lads on board. And again, to slightly digress, I think that's a gap that I can fill in terms of the national governing bodies dealing with our specific area. I can kind of bridge that gap, like a kind of disconnect that I think's there. So the first project is just I'm going to encourage and support this group of blokes to set up their own syndicate. I'm going to be on hand constantly on the phone. I'm going to be there as much as I possibly can do, like in between running my own fisheries. I'm a full-time gas engineer. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. Do you know what I mean? So I've got like all that going on. So yeah, that's kind of happened kind of organically through contacts within the industry. I knew that the place had just kind of suffered like another oxygen crash. So I've got involved. I've got meetings tomorrow with the council. Getting all the kind of paperwork in place. So that could potentially be the blueprint of the way it moves forward initially. The way that I would like it to move forward is if we get the subscribers, both the clubs and like the individual members. I did do a financial forecast, and like it is ambitious, but like it is doable. But so if we was to just kind of focus for now on the money side of stuff, if we was to raise money, through individual subscription and club subscription, then that could then go into projects on the waters ran by the member clubs in terms of water quality assessment, biomass assessment, and stock surveys, and then even subsequent stockings. And I know like a lot of funding available from the trust and the EA and stuff like that. You're not allowed to buy stock with it, but obviously, so a lot of fisheries need stock, whether that's down to predation or whatever it's down to. You know what I mean? But then we could do projects specifically on predation prevention. Something that we was kind of talking about dead recently. But yeah, just kind of general fishery management, science backed, solid kind of fishery management. One of the first things that I think that we could do on a budget that like, I think will be under is putting representatives of the member clubs through like an IFM course, a level 1 course.
I'll tell you what. I don't want to interrupt you much, but the really interesting part for me is obviously we've spoken about. I've asked you what are you trying to tackle? What are the problems and what are the challenges? Now, if you polled anglers today, if you went onto social media and you put a poll out of what the biggest problems in angling were, I reckon they would go somewhere in this order of pollution, predation, poaching, etc., etc., etc. It's really interesting because the two things you've covered, none of them are pollution, predation, or poaching. And the first two kind of challenges you're looking to tackle, and just to come in on this, I completely agree with you, are more angling opportunity, getting people to engage in communities to get more fishing on venues that there's no fishing, and fishery management. Now, you are, in my eyes especially, but I think this is a fairly informed bit of information here, completely right. People always want to blame, otters, cormorants, migrant anglers, absolutely everything they want to blame for angling being, worse than it was. There are cases to say that in some ways angling's worse than it used to be, and in some cases to say it's better. We've never had more opportunity, more kit, more media, more eyes on it, the ability to talk about it, more platforms. But 100% hitting the nail on the head, the most important part about kind of improving the sport in terms of getting people together is to get more angling opportunity and to get the wider community to understand that angling is a benefit. You've only got to look, and I'm not sure when we're going to be releasing this video, but you've only got to look currently, and if I look on the socials today, the situation with the Wingerworth Lido, which I don't know if you're aware of, Jamie.
No.
But this is a lake run by or owned by North Derbyshire County Council, and they've decided to stop the lease for the angling club, remove fishing
I've
rights,
seen
and stop all
the angling trough post. Sorry for putting. Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, they're stopped fishing on the venue because they want to create a biodiversity hub. Now, in my eyes, and I'm quite passionate about this, and I've reached out to those guys and offered support and advice and all the rest of it, but we cannot allow a narrative. And it's not just about Wingerworth Lido, because at the end of the day, Wingerworth Lido is one venue for the local people. But we can't allow a national narrative that angling is a negative impact on biodiversity, because I truly believe that fishing and fishermen and angling and the investment of angling clubs and the eyes and ears of angling clubs are one of the key benefits to biodiversity. Most venues run by anglers or run by fishing clubs and fisheries receive the most investment, the most time, the most volunteer effort. Increases net biodiversity, not just for fish, but for the whole ecology, for plants, for animals, for birds, for insects, all these kind of things. And the Wingerworth Lido's become a bit of a kind of flagship piece for that. And it's very similar to what you're doing, very similar to the Park Lake you're talking about. We have got to convince the wider community, we've got to convince wider society that angling is a good thing. And there are many aspects to that. Even if someone was to challenge you on the fact that angling is a benefit to biodiversity, which I don't think they can. I think that there's so much evidence to say that the investment in time, money, and effort of angling clubs is good for the ecology. You've only got to look at the mental and physical health benefits, Jamie. You look at the benefits of angling to mental health, very clearly documented now and accepted that angling is a prescribed activity for mental health, but also physical health, obviously, getting out in the environment, walking, getting some fresh air, getting out there. So it's fascinating, and I really think, and this is why I truly, I really do buy into what you do. And what you're doing with NWAA, you've identified for me the absolute key problems in angling that need tackling. Is a lack of fishery management and a lack of recognition in wider society about angling. Less angling opportunity because people don't recognise the benefits of fishing. And I wouldn't say I'd be disappointed, but if you were just somebody else that was tackling pollution and predation and poaching and all these kind of things, I think you'd be barking up the wrong tree. So it's great to hear that for a start. I think you're doing exactly the right thing.
Just to kind of slightly go back to what you've just said then about the, I don't think that a lot of park lakes, like a lot of lakes in general, wouldn't be in the condition that they're in if it wasn't for anglers. You see, so like I've got a park lake, and we've got like a community group, that also help out like at around that site. But they're limited to their knowledge. They're limited to what they can do. My waters are all in the condition that they're in, which is kind of pristine at the moment, or they're all kind of beautiful, overgrown, lush, very, very kind of biodiverse, specifically because of anglers. The very first lake that I kind of took over had been abandoned due to antisocial behaviour. We're in Manchester, so like we're not the best area really, but my main site now, or like my kind of baby, if you like, 11 years ago was classed by the police and the local community as a site of antisocial behaviour. Now it's on TripAdvisor for like a beauty spot, because we've tackled the antisocial behaviour. We've tackled the lads that was fishing, who was probably causing like a little bit of this antisocial behaviour, but only because of the, how can I put it, the reluctance to cooperate with the authorities, if you like. You see, so I've got those lads on side. Have educated them how to take care of their lake now. So I believe that a lot of waters up and down the country wouldn't be in the good state that they're in if it wasn't for angling and
I mean,
anglers.
a lot of kind of, and this again isn't really angling specific, but a lot of influencing people is about steering the ship. You know, you can't individually influence every person on earth, certainly not every angler. But it's about influencing people is about steering people in the right direction, which is exactly what you've done on that venue. You know, you've turned it from an antisocial behaviour spot to a beauty spot by just steering the anglers. I don't want to use the word manipulate, but to a certain extent, it's the right word. But kind of steering them in the right direction with a gentle push,
Educate as well
rather
to a
than
degree.
yeah. Education's part of that push kind of thing. Just let them know. And it's always the way to success is to explain to someone why you're doing something. You know, if you explain why what they're doing isn't beneficial, if you just tell someone not to do something, they'll just wonder who you are and tell you to do one kind of thing. But if you explain why, and all of a sudden they understand the benefits, and especially if they understand that it will make their fishing better tomorrow. You know, if you say, look, lads, if you use a good landing net or an unhooking mat, and you treat the fish a bit better, you'll be a 50 next week. You know, if you were to say things like that, but and it doesn't feel like you should have to. Like, it seems really obvious, but I think sometimes we take it for granted, Jamie, because you and I and a lot of other people are so passionate about this, and we've forged a career in angling. You have to remember, for some people, this is still just a hobby. You know, you don't know everything about your hobby. You don't know the science behind it. And although I'm always surprised that some of the things you have to explain to people, it's our responsibility to do that. You know, there is a great responsibility for, as much as I kind of said, we're not going to make our millions here. You and I are lucky enough that we do benefit from the sport of angling. You know, we invest in the sport of angling. I know you've got your gas engineer job as well. But, I'm paid to work in the sport of angling. I'm very fortunate for that, but it also does come with great responsibility in the truest Spider-Man sense of the term. There is a responsibility for people in the sport who benefit from the sport, who learn a lot and have got a lot of experience and contacts, to help those for whom this is just a hobby, that want that hobby to continue. And I don't think if you did a survey, I don't think anyone's going to say, I don't want angling to get better. They're not going to say, don't save the fish, don't manage the water, don't learn anything, and don't help the kids. But if you surveyed if they knew how to, I think there'd be a kind of lack of information out there, which is exactly where somewhere like a Northwest Anglers Alliance comes in. And as you said, that's not to challenge the national authority on this. The Angling Trust does a fantastic job from a central location, but as you said,
100%.
people like
Are they
yourself,
limited?
people
Are they
like
definitely
yourself
limited?
have got a. Yeah, well, there's only so far you can stretch so many resources, and I'll come on to that one in a minute. But no one knows your area better than you do, and that's in a very general sense. Not exactly. I'm not saying Jamie Clayton's the god of the North or anything, but no one knows the North like Northerners. It sounds like Game of Thrones now, but no one knows the North like Northerners, and you know where the improvements are to be made, and you know what the lads want.
Well, again, this is the thing, you see. So obviously, at a typical, you see, council estate park lake over in Stockport, it's got the local anglers that have been taking care of it, voluntarily, to a degree. You see, so when I've approached them, some of them knew who it was already there through like my kind of social media audience. So like they knew that I'd, what I was about, so to speak. So they gave me a bit more time to, listen to me. There was a few lads that just put instant kind of resistance up against me. But I think over the past 10 years, I've definitely kind of, developed the skill of like engaging these people. So literally after like a 15-minute conversation with a group of lads on a council estate, 10 miles away from home, so not my, specific area, like I managed to get them all on side. And yesterday, like I wasn't there yesterday, but yesterday, or they've all kind of grouped up again, done like a massive litter pick, sending me photos like and videos like of what they've been doing. So again, I think it's just kind of, my thing is like not to put myself down, but if I can do what I've done, they can do it as well. So I've got the blueprint, so to speak, on what they need to do, because I've made all the mistakes. I've corrected it. I've got the contacts now. Like if I don't know something, I phone you. I phone Drew. I phone Mike at the EA. I'm really good friends now. Like with you see our local, fishery officer. So it's like I just think that like if I can do what I've done, then they like can definitely do it. And then again, to engage other members of that specific community, the management plan that I've just sent this morning over to Josephine in the council, includes segregating like a section of bank that would be no anglers, and we're going to make that into like a nesting bird zone. And there was definitely undercut bank work needed doing. So again, like the plants that I'm going to recommend to kind of help to enforce that bank would be to increase kind of biodiversity like and wildlife. So it's all little stuff like that that I've learned over the past 10 years these lads wouldn't know. So like I'm going to do the like initial blueprint, but then I think after that I can kind of step away and I can just be there like as a form of support, and then potentially move on to the next one very very similar, if you like. Do you know what I mean? And I think it all kind of depends how it
hitting the
grows.
nail on the head with it, Jamie, to be honest. Like you're hitting the nail on the head with it. It's nothing much more complicated than just putting people in touch with the right people.
Yeah,
There's so much out there where people just don't know who to call. We've always got this frustration. We've all got frustrations in angling, whether it is the pollution, the famous water companies, the, predation, the, cormorants, whatever it is. In a lot of cases that there are solutions, and I'm not saying that we've got them all. I'm not saying it's perfect, and cormorants is the prime one. No, the solution isn't at the moment perfect, but at the moment, no one's actually taking the right solution. No one's using what they have got, the tools that are in their basket. And a lot of what you're describing here is just that you've worked hard enough and you've been in it long enough that you know the right people to call and that you can provide the right services to do something about that, which is as simple as it is.
he is
And it
definitely.
sounds like it's going to be a success.
Yeah, you see, to be fair, like I do find, obviously working for Drew every winter for the past, 5 years over at British Aquacare, I do see that there's definitely an old school and new school in fishery management. Obviously nowadays you've got like a lot of educated blokes, that like have bothered to go back to like the IFM or Myers Cole College in Preston or Sparshow, you see further down, like in an old school kind of element. So I think that the new school's becoming kind of stronger and stronger, if you like. And I think it is just that, it's knowing who to phone. If you don't know what to do, you need to have kind of somebody like in your phone book that will know what to do. You see, so again, I'm not saying I know like every question that I might get asked in the future, to do with all these waters that like I would like to help. I absolutely won't have the answers for every question, but I'll absolutely have somebody in my phone, that does know, because I've been doing it for that long now.
No, I mean, a benefit of organisations like yours, one of the key services is literally signposting to other services. You aren't the font of all knowledge, but what you are is the font of contacts of all knowledge, which
Yeah,
is similar in a local basis to what the Angling Trust do on a national basis, which is similar on a local basis to what we do at Clubmate, as well as obviously the software we provide. One of the benefits is that we've got a lot of contacts. We work with a lot of fisheries and a lot of fishery businesses that we can signpost the clubs that never really had the contacts before. They'd never been kind of stuck in their own wheel, so to speak, and were just at the end of their tether, didn't know who to speak to. But now you can speak, and modern tools, and even as simple as the phone, the smartphone these days, you can find anything at the touch of a button. And people like yourself centralising that with NWAA can only be a good thing. I never think there can be a downside to bringing more anglers together, because I truly think that one of the biggest challenges in angling is that we're all so disparate. You know, anglers, and this is a key phrase, you know, angling is many things to many people, which is a really great way of thinking about it, because you respect that anglers all love different things and we love each other for it. But at the same time, it means that you can get very stuck in your own funnel. You know, you can only be bothered about carp, or you're only bothered about kind of predators, or you're only bothered about lakes and not rivers. And it will never work that way. You know, if that's the way we operate, we're trying to operate 50 different businesses instead of one. You know, we're trying to move 50 industries instead of a single one.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean that like it is kind of one of my favourite fishery management phrases, if you like. You know, fishing is literally a million different things and a million different people. So just because, like myself as an angler, it's like I've met these lads down like at the reservoir over in Stockport, and some of the stuff that they wanted wouldn't be specifically what I would want lads to fish for. But again, that's something that I've had to learn to do. So the King Billy Syndicate has been designed specifically how I like to fish. It's weeder, it's close water fishing, stalking, it's gingerly, but then I couldn't just kind of recreate that everywhere I've gone. Like I did that kind of because that was the first lake that I kind of took over, so that was all I knew is what I wanted to do. But then, going back to the fishing being like a million different things for a million different people. So now I have literally, and I'm still trying to create something for everybody, on that basis. So again, it's like I think that we will be listening to clubs, trying to advise them of the best course of action on specific topics, specific issues. But then it will always be geared up to what the club, what type of club they want to be, what their goal is, whether it's
It's
a
50-50
carp
there,
syndicate.
Jamie. Like,
Go
obviously,
on.
you can't tell people what to do, and in many
Yeah.
cases, it's not what they want to do or what the goals are. But there's a very 50-50 split that you are there to tell them how to do it, or to advise them how to do it. Because what they want to do is what they want to do, and that's what the business. Essentially, that's like, you can't go and tell Morrison's to sell cars. You've got they sell what they sell. But in many cases, it's given them a bit of an advice on how to do it better and to improve how they do it, and that not necessarily a plug and play of what you do on King Billy.
Yeah.
Nor should it be, as you've learned, like, nor should it be. So I just want to kind of tie back round again, and this is one of the things. I think it's easy to look at something like the Northwest Anglers Alliance and have a really vague concept of what it is. Have this vague concept that it's a group of anglers, which is great. But what it is a way to engage anglers to help themselves. And I think that's a really important message here. It's not just another authority where money rains from the sky. And one of the things I want to cover, and I'm very passionate about it, but talking to you, I think, is the right person to have this conversation. I think too many people think that the solution is going to rain from the sky for free. People just think there's just some infinite pot of money somewhere. There's infinite people, infinite tools, infinite bailiffs, infinite fishery managers. And I think there's a really important message, which I think is really at the core of Northwest Anglers Alliance, that it's about empowering anglers to help themselves and clubs and fisheries, because there simply isn't enough resource out there that it's going to be given to you, Jamie. Before I kind of bring you in on it, let's talk about a key statistic that I think so many people are either unaware of or don't really realise the implication of. Rod licence revenue. So currently in the UK, on an annual basis, we've dropped below 1 million anglers. There's just under 1 million rod licences sold in the UK each year. And the revenue from that across all categories is just over 20 million. And it sounds massive. If someone gives me 20 million, I'm all right, mate. I'm going to Hawaii and you can all run your own bloody clubs. But 20 million pounds spread across the sport of angling is a drop in the ocean. It's like getting a drop in the ocean and dropping another drop in it. 20 million pounds divided by every water in the UK is nothing.
It's nothing.
It's absolutely nothing.
Yeah, to be fair, this is the thing
and I
again.
know from, go on.
No, it's like like nothing changes if nothing changes. So like, we can't just kind of sit around and blame the authorities, blame the angling trust, blame like the at the agency, because like we've just said, there's all these kind of stats that people don't understand. They don't even try and research it. So it's just not fair.
I mean, there's a really, really simple way of putting this, Jamie. If you actually take the time, and not many people will because they're not as boring as I am, if you actually take the time to read the annual accounts for the Environment Agency, the cost of maintenance or the cost of running fisheries is higher than the revenue. So
Yeah,
the Environment Agency is already supplementing that with money that didn't come from anglers.
yeah,
And whether that's from abstraction fees or whatever else it comes from an Environment Agency point of view, the most common, you'll have seen this as much as I have, Jamie. Every time you see a post by the Environment Agency or talk about the Environment Agency, it's why do I bother paying for my license? I don't see a bailiff. I don't get anything done. Where does all the money go? And it's ludicrous, Jamie. One of the real challenges, and this isn't to kind of offend anyone. That's no money. Like, that's no money. I did a restoration. There's a restoration project close to me. And bearing in mind, I'm talking about a collapsed weir on one river, on one venue. And the repair cost was $1 million.
right.
So if we're talking about £1 million project on one weir, on one lake somewhere,
Yeah,
well, that would mean I can only do 20 in the whole country if there was no other cost. If there was
exactly.
no other cost to the Environment Agency, we could do 20 of those projects.
Yeah, and exactly so.
And if you then talk about, obviously, a lot of people, you'll be aware of the Fisheries Improvement Programme.
Yeah.
I haven't got the exact numbers to hand, but a certain amount of rod licence revenue is then diverted to the Fisheries Improvement Programme, where you can apply for grants.
Yeah.
And that's about 6-7 million, I think, at the moment. It's about 6 or 7 million a year is signposted for projects. And the way that it usually works is that you have to come up with a project at your club or fishery that benefits the club and benefits angling, benefits rod licence holders. And you can apply for up to £5,000 in funding that then has to be matched or exceeded by the club itself and by volunteer time as well, either in time or money. But that 6 or 7 million is divided across like 1,000 applications.
Yeah, it's like a drop in the ocean, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an absolute drop in the ocean, and £5,000 gets you nowhere in fishery management, Jamie. For that, you can put a few trees in. I mean, yes, I don't want to disparage the fact that it's a great project, but the Northwest Anglers Alliance is key, or people like yourself are key to making people realise that it's ourselves that have got to solve this problem. Yes, the rod licence money is great, but it's already taken in maintaining fisheries the way that they are, which is, I think, what people miss, Jamie, is that people think that all of that rod licence revenue is spare every year to fix more. But
Yes, just do whatever they want.
Being spent. It's already being spent, Jamie, just to keep us where we are now. It's that money is being spent, and you'll see this every summer, Jamie. It's being spent on oxygen crashes, visits to sites. It's being spent on Calverton Fish Farm to breed new fish. It's being spent on enforcement officers. That 20 million isn't spare every year to spend on angling. It's already being used to keep it in the state that it is today. And the only other place that money is going to come from, and the only other place that revenue and the effort and the time is going to come from, is from us. It's from anglers.
Yeah, this is it. It's
I don't know how much you agree with that.
Yeah, like 100% all of it, mate. Yeah. It's like, you see, to be fair as well, like the type of person I am. I'm not the type of person to just sit and ask for handouts. Don't get me wrong. Like, I got the FIP last year. So I was very, very kind of grateful for that, and I did. But I'm not the type of person to just sit and expect for change to happen. So we can't just sit round moaning if we're not going to at least try and do something ourselves. So obviously, like a lot of the people that I've spoken to about the concept, admittedly they was all my friends, but they were they like, I'd like to think there was all like enough of friends to have told me to shut up if they thought it was like a stupid idea. But I think it's something that is definitely needed. I've spoken to the EA, I've spoken to the trust. Like I've already got a really good relationship with Mike at the EA already. Do you know what I mean? Like over in Manchester. Not got a relationship with the trust. Not that I've got a bad one. I've just not got a relationship. But like obviously that like can and will change. I hope like in the future. So I just think that I can be the gap possibly in between the grassroots anglers and the trust like in this area. Obviously having a reputation, having the engagement skills that I'd like to think I've got and that I've kind of built up over the past kind of 10 years, doing what I'm doing, and having a track record with what I've already done. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, like we can't just kind of sit round and hope that we're going to get, funding. I mean, there's loads of people that I know that complain about nothing's happened, but they don't even apply for the funding. So,
Yeah, it's same old thing, Jamie. And obviously, it's not just this, is it? People are the amount of stuff you see on Facebook where you see the police don't do this and the Environment Agency don't do that. And when you say, "Well, did you actually report it?" They say, "Well, no, I didn't bother."
yeah,
And you go,
yeah.
"Well, I mean, I'm not being funny. They
What's
didn't
the
employ
point?
Mystic
Is it?
Meg.
Yeah,
20 million, and they took that 20 million and employed Mystic Meg to get a crystal ball out and guess that something happened."
yeah.
But regardless, Jamie, like I've said, like even if everyone applies for that funding, it's not
It's not.
designed
Yeah,
to
yeah,
solve angling. It's
yeah.
designed to be. And I
Exactly.
think we need to, and people like yourself are great because you've got the message and hopefully you can disseminate that message to other people. That little bit of support and that little bit of funding is designed to help you do more yourself.
Yeah,
That's designed to help angling and help clubs and help fisheries as a little step along the way, as a little bit of encouragement. The
yeah.
rod license money isn't here to fix angling. It's here to allow us to go fishing, and as a benefit of that, we get a little bit of support to help us do more. To help us improve the sport. And I think if I'm getting it right, Jamie, that's exactly what your aim is.
Exactly what the aim is. Yeah. Nothing more, nothing less. To be fair, I mean, like I have done all the figures, and like I say, like I am ambitious. You call me naive before, but I'll,
I
possibly.
meant it in the nicest of ways. I think when you've never tried to manage angling on a wider scale, if
Yeah, yeah.
if you've not done much beyond your own fisheries, and I mean naive in the nicest possible way
No, I'll
of meaning
take that. Yeah,
you've not had to start. You haven't got any fear of the challenges. You've got
yeah,
no
yeah.
fear of what might go wrong because you might as well try it. You've still got the passion without any reservation.
This is the thing, the only fear that I've got is falling flat on my face and looking like an idiot. But like, and I do that
There's
a
no big
lot
change
anyway.
there, mate.
So yeah, so it's like, and again, if we don't try or we don't know, like I have done the maths. Again, it is ambitious, but just to give you the slight kind of insight on the maths, if we was to get 2,000 individual members, yeah, in a year, we would have something like £46,000. Now that £46,000 could then even be like spent per year on one specific fishery. And imagine that 46 grand being spent on one club. Yeah. I mean, not like I'm not saying that it would be, but just hypothetically, yeah. Every single year, if we was to be able to spend in like the region like a 40 grand on one water, or
Yeah.
within our kind of member club, that'd be amazing. I mean, we
Well,
would
let's not
probably
write
kind of,
that off, Jamie. I think it's there's an obvious alarm bell there for people of going, well, I ain't invested in the Northwest for you to put 50 grand into one lake, but there's an alarm bell there that rings. But you've got to step back and think about it slightly longer, and you think, but that one lake's going to save angling. That one lake is 1% of the puzzle, and it's not a 1 year project.
yeah, yeah.
We're not in a
It's
1 year game
ongoing,
here.
it's constant.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
one, and it's not just about fishing, it's not just about saving Lake A. Lake A is going to be a flagship project that shows the benefit to widen the scope so that next year it's not 40 grand, it's 400 grand.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm not saying that you're going to. I'm not saying this is a kind of scheme to build a load of money and invest in one fishery per year.
No, not at
But
all.
nor should we write that off because, like you say, if you looked at a massive, and especially it depends on the catchment area. Like if you look at a lake that accesses thousands of anglers, then 50 grand will be life changing for the local people, for the kids, for the elderly, for the for the sick, for the for people with mental health issues. But all options are there. But it's all about, on any scale, whether it's right down to your single lake, right the way up to the whole of the north, the northwest. It's about providing more angling opportunity, but by empowering anglers to help provide more angling opportunity.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
it's no clear. It can't be any clearer, Jamie, than the more you invest as anglers, the more you will benefit as anglers.
It's like, again, like I don't want to alienate the audience that I'm trying to kind of, appeal to, but just what I see as a fishery manager and being heavily involved, like in local angling for the past decade, it is a very selfish game. But I do understand that, because it's like a solitary sport with like a solitary outcome. Say, for instance, carp fishing, it's just about, these lads are only focused on catching that one carp. But so, literally for the price of less than a cost of coffee per month. And this is the maths that I tried to do. Like, I tried to make it, because obviously we're not in the most affluent area, but for the price of less than a cost of coffee a month, I'm sure, the majority of us would be able to subscribe to that and then just forget about it. Obviously, I'll be doing kind of regular updates on like the social medias, the websites and stuff like that, as like to where the money's going to go. So yeah, I think it's not a big ask in terms of financial commitment. The only ask would be a bit of faith, probably like in me, but I think I've got the track record, to kind of show what I've already been doing, show what I'm capable of doing. But yeah, it's definitely ambitious, but if we don't try, we don't know.
No, 100%, Jamie. So the one thing I want to tackle for it next, if we have a bit of a conversation about it next, there's absolutely no doubt at all that anglers are going to say to you, it's all well and good talking about these shiny things. It's all well and good talking about, engaging with councils and getting fishing and building a platform. What are you going to do about the things that we're upset about? What are you going to do? What are your thoughts on the predators and the pollution and, all these kind of things? Because this is one of the things that, in all honesty, this is what the Angling Trust can struggle with sometimes. Loads of good work on good things that really are improving angling, but it's not the stuff that makes anglers angry. What makes anglers angry is watching things eat their fish. And what makes anglers angry is watching things, watching pollution belly up a lake. So as much as, and it's unrealistic to think that you can influence at this stage nationally, policy or anything like that, what would your response be when anglers say to you, why should I give you my $1.99 if you're not going to challenge the things that upset me?
Good, good, good question. And I think, like I've already said, that I can bridge the gap that is definitely there. And I can kind of collectively communicate, between the Northwest Anglers Alliance and all our members that we've not got yet. But and like the trust. But then again, it's like that post that I shared the other week of yours. We got massive engagement, got massive engagement, all to do with recording cormorant sightings. So it's definitely like an emotive subject. But I guarantee not one of them people that bothered to comment like an essay, on like the comment thread. I guarantee not one of them has saved the link, and not one of them has since, recorded like a reported sighting. So again, it would just be like encouraging people to do stuff like that, get involved, trying to get the same kind of message across that there's no point moaning at me or anybody else unless you get involved. And it's like, that's what the Angling Trust are really kind of struggling with. They, people just expect them to just do it. They like need help, they need numbers, they need, they like need this evidence, specifically like on this one now, the or the cormorant sightings, they like need the evidence to be kind of collated by the angling community.
Statistics, Jamie. I'll give you a few statistics which you'll be aware of generally, maybe. But if you look at cormorants as an issue, Nobody in this country has any clue how many there are, but a lot of people are saying there are too many. Now, being cynical, playing the devil's advocate here, if I'm a non-angling departmental, governmental, official, and let's say Mr. Government A goes to Mr. Angling B and says, "Oh, cormorants. So how many are there then?" And the anglers go, "I don't know, mate. There's just too many." Would you respond? If someone said to you, "I want some money," if your boy came up to you and said, "I want some money, Dad," and you say, "Well, how much do you want?" And he goes, "I don't know, mate. Just some money." You wouldn't say, "Well, there you go," would you? You wouldn't just hand over the money. We've got to evidence it, and this is a constant challenge, Jamie. It's not just with this; it's with everything in angling and probably wider society as well. I hate to break it to people, but laws aren't changed on Facebook. And people have these rants, and these rants, Jamie. Like, you've seen these rants, where they'll slag off the Environment Agency, they'll slag you off, they'll slag me off, they'll slag off all the authorities. Do they genuinely think they're making a difference? Do they think anyone listens? Do they think the Environment Agency, when the Environment Agency put a post out about a nice positive patrol, or, they've done some prosecutions and 200 comments on there saying, "I've never seen an EA, I don't know why I buy my license." Do they think the Environment Agency have got someone employed to read that and change the law? This is what, I wonder. Do you think they're genuinely reading that? What they actually do, and I hate to, I'll peel back the veil a little bit here. They love it when you do that, because that means you're not bothering them in the right way. While you sit and shout about it on social media, they'll go, "Look at that lot." They just keep moaning on Facebook. No one's actually emailed us properly. If they did that, we might have to do something. And it's not referring to the kind of EA directly, but like if you were like an official body and someone just kept throwing eggs at your window, you just laugh at them. But if they were officially reporting the data that you couldn't hide from, and let's not forget, there are statutory duties here. There are legal statutory requirements for the Environment Agency, for Natural England, for all of these bodies. There are statutory duties that they must uphold. But until you can prove that it's a problem, you can't fix it. So while everyone says, "I don't know, there's just a lot of cormorants," no one will do anything. Now, if every angler in the country, and I know that's probably a bit bold, but if every angler in the country reported every cormorant that they saw, we would at least know how big the problem was. And the other half of that conversation, and I don't know why this is such a challenge, there is currently a license to cull cormorants. And let's make one thing clear. Let's make one thing clear, and I don't want to speak for all anglers, but I don't want to kill anything. I don't want to kill anything, but there are certain species and certain areas where responsible management is required. And in certain circumstances, that requires the control of population, such as with cormorants. There is currently the ability to apply for a license for lethal control of cormorants, and you have to provide evidence, and then you can get a license to kill so many. And correctly, because I already know what the challenge to this is, no, it's not very many. So you might have 100 cormorants, and your initial
I think
license
it's 6 a year, isn't it? Is it 6? Am I right?
It's completely area dependent, Jamie. It depends on what your area is, how much it covers. But it's anywhere from 2 to 6 to 8 birds or whatever else. And of course, it's really easy to look at that and say, why bother? When I'm sat looking at 200, why bother with 3? But there is a national cap. There is a national cap. And again, I'm not going to quote exact numbers, but I'll come up with kind of a figure here. Let's just say, and I don't think it's far off, but let's just say the national cap is 3,000. You're allowed to shoot at the moment 3,000 birds. And every angler in the country is saying, well, this is the biggest problem in angling. It's destroying venues. It's going to ruin the sport, empty rivers. No one's hit that 3,000, Jamie. And, obviously playing devil's advocate here, if that was me, I'd go back and say, well, it can't be that big a problem because you're not even shooting the 3,000 you are allowed to shoot.
But
and
again,
I've been banging my head against the wall for that for years, Jamie, and going, well, if you bother to actually get the license to shoot 3,000, and when we've banged 3,000 for 2 or 3 years in a row, when we've headbutted that ceiling of 3,000 for 2 or 3 years in a row, and then you go back to the authorities and say, well, we've done it, lads. We've hit the cap. It's still not solved the problem. Then someone's going to say, okay, well, we better double it then. Then we'll go to 6,000 or 4,000 or, but until we actually, at the moment, I think, and again, don't quote me on this, but I think there's like a cap of 3,000. And I think the actual amount recorded as shot is about 1,000. Yeah. And if someone says, well, you're only shooting a third, so it can't be that big a problem. And just, I'll let you come in a minute. I hate to take the thunder off you or anything, but I'll tackle the other one that will come up on this. They'll say, yeah, and they'll say it and they really shouldn't. Yeah, but we just shoot them anyway. They give us a license to 3 and we just shoot more. Well, that's great. Well done. You've illegally shot a few more birds, but unless you've got the ability, unless you want to go to prison for a very long time, or you've got a big set of gonads and you're going to shoot 1,000, then what are you achieving? You go home very happy with yourself, and you've shot a couple more, but you've had no impact on changing the future. What you need to do is change the official policy, because it's official policy that will make a difference, not the fact that you shot one more that you shouldn't because you've got a license for 2 and you shot 3. Tee hee hee. Get really excited because you're a big boy because you shot one more cormorant. But yeah, I mean, coming in on that, Jamie, again, it's about empowering the angler.
Yeah, again, but like it's the same thing that I think that like we've already said. Like they'll all sit and moan like and spout all this kind of negative energy, because they expect somebody else to do it. And so back to the initial question of what we would do. It's not what we will do, but it's what we can do. Like if I can be the kind of collective voice for the Northwest, that then can report back to the AT. It's so, but like it's just trying to encourage people. If they was to use that same negativity for something positive, then we would undoubtedly see a change. But they just sit around, expecting
if you could put
somebody
it in
else to do
batteries,
it.
Jamie. If you could put that energy into a battery, you'd be able to power your house for the rest of your
Yeah,
life, wouldn't you?
yeah. But like again, that's my kind of personality, though. Like I'm not, or at least I try not to be. Like I'm not a negative person. I am kind of sometimes within the fishery industry. I'm surrounded by negativity. I've been slagged off like anything, for what I've done, and I'm kind of, sat there, scratching my head, wondering what I've done wrong. But that's just the nature of people. Some, people, not all. But yeah, so
I
and I
mean, let's
think I
not
would do.
forget, Jamie. Like it's not everybody. But as with everything, whether it's surveys or reviews or whatever it is of any business, you only hear about the bad ones because they shout the loudest.
Yeah,
And the ones that the people that there's not to say at all, and we can be guilty, and I especially can be guilty of making it sound like this is everyone. It's not everyone, but the ones that are doing good things are very quiet. They're very quietly going about their business. They're reporting the cormorants. They're doing the right thing. They're volunteering their time. They're making a lot of effort. They're fishing responsibly and ethically. But they're outnumbered, or they're certainly out-volumed. They're out-shouted by the negative voices. And what we need to do is have people like yourself with the connections in the community to help turn that around, to turn those loud voices into positive loud voices and not negative ones.
and I think again, obviously, with like the relationships that I've got only on my, specific sites, like it's about trying to educate other community groups like within the area that would normally typically be against anything like that, trying to educate them as to, why it is a problem. Like as well as just trying to lobby for the change like in policy, which would come largely from like the angling community, trying to educate other groups within the green spaces that like we are fishing as to why it is a problem, not just coming from the bloodthirsty kind of perspective sometimes that like I read on Facebook, do you know what I mean, which just doesn't paint anybody like in a positive light. It's just trying to educate other groups, and then potentially, getting more signatures on a petition, or more kind of you see reported sightings done other than just angling groups.
100%, Jamie. If you just take, and obviously we haven't got the numbers on us here, but if you're trying to tackle an issue on a river and you get the anglers, you've got some anglers, But if you had the same amount, even let's pretend they're all equal, but you added the kayakers, and you added the dog walkers, and you added the cyclists, and you added, even if they had an equal number of participants, all of a sudden you've got 5 times as many people.
Yeah.
And I often say, when it comes to tackling issues, you want the people in your community that aren't anglers to think those are my friends, not those are the fishermen. You don't want to be some kind of anonymous thing. You want them to be, oh, those are the guys that helped us with that litter pick. Those are the guys that, we had we did a fate with, we went to a country, summer fair or, whatever else. Not just, those guys that go fishing, because, that's anonymous. They'd have no relationship, no feeling, no obligation towards you. But if you work together and you help them and they help you, all of a sudden it's a lot of friends helping each other and not just these anonymous kind of partisan groups.
And exactly right. You see, to be honest, like I've said this literally for the past 10 years, that I seem to get better conversation. I seem to get more, gratitude from the general dog walker, from the bird watch, watching the kingfisher on the lake, about the work that we've been doing, than I do off my audience that I'm trying to work for. Obviously digressing slightly now, but obviously I see anglers have always got an opinion of what I should do and how I should do it, and it's always geared up to their specific taste in angling, or what they want out of angling. So yeah, like I have made a point of kind of befriending all the other kind of community groups and all the other individuals that do use the sites and that do enjoy using the sites, because they're like as important in like the running of my lakes as like anybody else's. Because then we can, like a lot of the negative, stigma towards angling, we can kind of help to, change from like the inside out. When I get to know these different people that you see previously had like a bad experience, with anglers, or, with like an angling club that you see potentially used to run one of my sites, do you know what I mean? So that is kind of, you see, something that I am kind of big on, not just with the anglers, it's community engagement.
I put it in. I mean, even if you want to, you're 100% right, Jamie. If we've got more friends in the community, we'll do better. But just put it into pounds and pennies, Jamie. When you talk about, we've already covered the funding in this. A £5,000 fit bid, it's fantastic. The pots of funding available that aren't angling specific are astronomical compared to that. I did a project. It's probably started about 2 years ago now, and there was £5,000 in fit funding and 50 grand in investment from a different company. 50 grand.
Yeah.
And there are pots of money out there that are not angling exclusive, or certainly not angling specific, from businesses, councils, bodies, public bodies like Sport England. There are pots of money in there that astronomically dwarf what we've got. So the more friends we make, the more access to investment we're going to get from some serious money, more serious money. And again, it will become self-perpetuating. The more we do this, the more eyes we get, the more positive it is, and we'll do even more.
100%. You see, to be fair, I've got like a project now that's it's just kind of really started to move this year. Like I've got like an old public toilet block that's been disused for 25 years. I've managed to sign the lease. I've got the change of use application approved. We're just pushing the planning through now, but it's going to be converted into a classroom for the kids. Now, it is my initiative. It's my initiative, and it will be, technically my classroom, because the lease will be in my name. But I've involved every community group, to use our site. We've got the Friends of Oakrington Woods. We've got like some, rambling groups, walking groups, and I've tried to kind of involve everybody, because not to be selfish, I won't be using that building 7 days a week, so it's of a massive use to like the wider community.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, but you see, because of that though, the funding that's been opened up to us is massive. Because it's not just for that one thing. It's for like a collective group. That are all kind of cooperating together. The routes are kind of almost endless. Saying that, I've not actually won anything yet, but we're still trying though.
Let's hope you actually win it, because otherwise that's a bit of a kind of moot argument, really, isn't it? Let's hope
I'm
you
pretty
actually
sure we
win
will
it, though.
do. To be fair, I've had like a lot of positive, site meetings recently. Do you know what I mean? But that is definitely because I've had the help as well of people from other community groups that know more than me about certain stuff. They probably kind of better than me, writing emails. Do you know what I mean? So again, like I've, welcomed these people in, like and a lady at the moment, you see, called Alison, been a massive, massive help to me. Do you know what I mean? So again, but this just comes back to the thing that I'm not a selfish person. Everything that I do within the fishery industry is genuinely to better local angling and the local, how would you put it, the local kind of community benefits of these kind of green, spaces. But that's why that I'm now getting the help of all these other people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's its own reward, isn't it? So we're going to have to kind of draw to a close for today's today's episode. So just round this out, I want to kind of reach a conclusion, Jamie. I'm going to put you on the spot now. What's the target, Jamie? What are you going to do in 1 year's time? Where do you want to be in 1 year's time from now? And what if you had to sum it up in a very general message? What would it be?
The target, I honestly don't know, because again, I'm obviously very ambitious just in the fact that I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not a one-man band, don't get me wrong. Like I've got like a lot of help in this, you especially. Like I've got some of the most well-respected companies within the industry backing me, VS Fisheries, or the Institute of Fishery Management. So we've got instant, in my opinion, we've got instant kind of, credibility, not through me, through them. So my target, I don't know. I don't know. I think if we was to have a second podcast in 12 months' time, between me and you, what I would, being realistic, I would hope to be telling you that we've turned Sykes Reservoir, completely around. We've done a small stocking. We've now got a club that I've helped to create, and I've stepped right back, and I'm only there on the phone now as kind of support, like if they need any support, I'm there. And then we've moved on to the next lake. I would hope to have had, I don't know, like it's just really hard to say, a minimum club entry, minimum individual angle, what them numbers could be. I just don't know, Rob. I really don't know.
Which is, it's also part of the excitement, Jamie. Like, you don't have to come up with the numbers. It's part of the excitement to see where it goes. And I think it's also a part of the big test tube. It's part of the big kind of scientific question of like how much our angler's going to engage with the solution. So we will do a podcast in a year's time. We'll actually do that podcast in a year's time. I'll make a note in the diary.
Well, the track record that I've got, I'm like a dog with a bone. I don't stop. No one would have ever, nobody would have thought 11 years ago that I'd have done what I've done with just the one lake that initially turned over, let alone the 7 that I've got. So I've got the confidence, and I've got the support group around myself in terms of the professionals that I've kind of, befriended. So I'm definitely like a dog with a bone, so I'm not going to stop. Whether we only get 500 members and that just kind of plods on for the next 10 years, with that 500 members, we will be able to generate money and we will do something good, So no matter what I do, it will be a positive impact.
Yeah. I mean, I've got no doubt at all, Jamie. There's nothing. There can't be a negative impact. I think it's, passion. I've got so much passion for passion, in angling. When I see people with a passion for angling, I've got such a kind of passion for it. We're here to kind of support you with that. I think it's absolutely fascinating. I think regardless of what you manage to achieve practically, I think the message is really important. I think, if anything, it serves as a great message to the angling community nationally, not just in the Northwest, but nationally. So like I've said, we'll schedule another one in a year's time, and we'll definitely come back and see where you've gone, and we'll see if the dog's still got his bone, and we'll go from there. So we'll draw it to a close today, Jamie. Thanks for coming. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. Seeing you being a part of your journey is a really fascinating thing to see, and it's really kind of satisfying to see, and we'll always be there to help you along the way. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us again for another episode of Casting Forward. Join us in a year's time for Jamie to see how Northwest Anglers Alliance is getting on. We're going to put some links in the comments so you can for some more information about NWAA, and you can join and you can get in touch with Jamie. And until next time, we'll see you later. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Join us next time for another episode of the Casting Forward podcast, brought to you by Clubmate. And if you haven't already, click the subscribe button now and follow us for more.